when you are no longer you. On the misty slope of a mountain lived an old monk named Daisher. His temple was small, made of wood and stone, surrounded by pine trees that softly creaked in the wind. Every morning, Daisher would sit silently by a nameless lake. He didn't speak. He didn't expect anything. He simply was. One day, a young traveler arrived. His eyes were weary, and his backpack felt heavier on the inside than it did on the outside. "Master," he said, voice trembling, "I've come to find myself. I'm lost inside." Daisher looked at him like one looks at a flame about to go out. "If you've come to find yourself," the monk replied, "you must be ready to not find yourself." The young man frowned, confused, but he stayed. The young man began to follow Daisher's routine. He woke up with the cawing of crows, fetched water from the icy stream, and swept the leaves that endlessly fell from the ancient cedar. During the day, they didn't speak. At night, they shared rice and tea in silence. Many moons passed this way, and though the young man didn't fully understand what he was doing, something inside him began to change. His thoughts shouted less, and his anxiety slowed to a crawl. One afternoon, while watching the clouds reflected in the lake, the young man broke the silence. "Master, every day I feel like something inside me is disappearing. Sometimes it scares me, like I'm not really myself anymore." Daisher smiled for the first time. "Good," he said. "When you think you're no longer yourself, stay right there. Don't run away." The young man swallowed hard. He didn't completely understand, but something deep in his bones did. That night, the young man didn't sleep. Sitting beneath the whispering tree, he felt the weight of his old identity melting away, like frost under the morning sun. The memories of who he thought he was, his name, his achievements, his wounds, drifted past him like leaves carried by the wind. He didn't try to hold on to them. He just watched them go. Part of him wanted to cry, but a deeper part simply observed. The next morning, Daisher handed him a smooth, round stone. "Throw it into the lake," he said. The young man obeyed. The stone broke the water's surface with a sharp splash, then disappeared. "That's the self," the master said. "It seems solid, unique, but it only takes a moment of true silence for it to sink back to where it came from." The young man lowered his gaze. He no longer knew who he was, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. The days continued their slow dance. The young man began to walk more slowly, to listen to the crow's call as if it were a poem, to see in the falling leaf a wordless lesson. One dawn, while sweeping the temple grounds, he felt something strange. No one was sweeping. His hands moved, his body breathed, but there was no self holding it all together. Just the action, ownerless, just presence without story. He ran to Daisher, still breathless from the shock. "Master," for a moment, there was no one. It wasn't me. It was no one. Daisher looked at him with tenderness. "That no one you felt is more real than any someone you've ever invented." The young man fell silent, as if something sacred had been revealed without needing words. From that day on, he stopped searching for answers. He began to live like a sunrise, ownerless, nameless, unhurried. One day, while gathering fallen branches after a storm, the young man stopped. An ant was climbing up his arm. He watched it closely. He no longer felt a difference between his skin and the moss, between the wind and his breath. Everything was one thing, breathing in 1,000 forms. Daisher watched him from a distance, like someone observing the blooming of an old plum tree. That night, in front of the fire, the young man quietly asked, "Who was I before I came here?" Daisher closed his eyes. Silence stretched out like an endless pause. "You were who you thought you were. Now, You are someone who doesn't need to be anything. The young man felt something loosen inside his chest. It wasn't joy or sadness. It was space, a vast space like the sky before a storm. And he understood. He hadn't arrived anywhere. He had simply stopped running. Over time, the young man was no longer young. His hair had turned to ash, and though his face was calm, it bore the wrinkles of many seasons. But in his eyes was a deep clarity, like water no longer afraid of the depths. One afternoon, while preparing tea, Daisher approached slowly. "It's time," he said simply. "For what?" asked the now monk without worry. "For the master to become silence, and silence to become the master." That night, Daisher sat by the lake for the last time. He didn't say goodbye. He just closed his eyes and left like the wind does, leaving no trace, yet transforming everything. The monk lit incense. He didn't cry. He didn't think. He just breathed. He understood that Daisher had never really left because he had never truly been anyone. He had only ever been presence. And now that presence lived within him. Years passed. The trees grew taller. Moss covered the old temple steps, and the crows kept singing with the same indifferent wisdom. Some people began to climb the mountain, drawn by rumors of a monk who spoke little but whose silence healed. He greeted everyone with a gentle smile and a steaming cup of tea. He offered no advice, taught no techniques. He simply invited them to sit by the lake and watch how the water reflected the sky without trying to hold on to it. Many left confused, others at peace. Some returned years later, not knowing why. The monk never asked for names. He only repeated what he once heard. When you think you're no longer yourself, stay there. That place is the door. And in his voice lived the echo of Daisher, as if he had never truly left. One morning, the monk sat by the lake, as he did every day. But this time there were no thoughts, no body, no time. The sky reflected in the water in the sky, and he was no longer between them. Or maybe he had always been. There was no I meditating, no I searching. Only silence being silence. The mountain being mountain. Life flowing without a name. Some say he died in that posture. Others that he simply dissolved like mist in the sun. But those who came after, sitting by the lake, swore they felt something unexplainable. A calm that didn't come from outside, a wordless certainty. And if one dared to stay long enough in silence, maybe, just maybe, they too began to feel that they were no longer themselves. And then they understood.